Hello again, my econ students. This video is going to run through worksheet number 17 for you in case there are parts of it that you didn't understand. The Phillips curve can be kind of a booger, so I get that, and so don't feel bad if not all of it made sense, but I'm here to make sure that you get the right answers and you understand the main couple of points that you really need to know. Okay, so here's where we're starting out. The best way, and remember I said this particular graph you don't need to know. It's not going to show up on the test, but understanding this really helps you understand a lot of things that are going on in this unit. So here's my scenario. We've got, this is our, again, aggregate supply, aggregate demand graph. Again, it should say aggregate supply, aggregate demand, but I just simplified it for you. And this is our current output, which is our GDP, and our price level, okay, which is inflation. Now, it says, show me what would happen if aggregate demand increased. Well, of course, you remember Erdl, right? Our good friend, increase right, decrease left. If aggregate demand increases, what does that do to prices? It makes prices go up because we go from here to here. So prices go up. And the next question is, what does that do to GDP? Well, GDP was here, and now GDP is here, and so it's going to cause GDP to increase. Okay, now, here's the thing. We are talking about what's called the Phillips curve. The Phillips curve measures the relationship between inflation and unemployment. Okay, now inflation, and I'm trying to see here, so on the back you're going to draw this. So let me start on the back real quick and show you where we're starting at. So we're going to have a graph, and what we're trying to find out is what relationship is there between inflation, which is price level, and unemployment. Okay, so that's what we're trying to figure out here. Now, based on what I just did, we can tell what happened to inflation. Because inflation is the same as price level, we know that price level went up. Unemployment is a little bit trickier because this graph does not directly measure unemployment, but indirectly it does. So here's how you got to look through this. Number 3, what happens to GDP? It increases. That means we're making more things. Okay? Let's look at number 4. Based on question number 3, if we're making more things, do you think we're going to need more or fewer workers to produce more things? That's right, very good, more workers, okay? So we're going to need more workers. Now, if we need more workers, what's going to happen to unemployment? Unemployment is going to go down, very good, okay? So, here's what I want you to note. This is the most important thing. Aggregate demand increased, and what happened to prices? They went up. What happened to unemployment? It went down. Okay, inflation went up, unemployment went down when demand increases. Now, let's look at what happens when demand decreases. And I know this is going to blow your minds, but it's going to be the exact opposite of what we just did, but let's see it, make sure. So, we got our price and output, and this time demand decreases. Okay, D2. And again, think about what's happening in the economy right now. Okay, demand has decreased because a lot of people are out of work and people don't have money to spend. And so we're starting to see prices come down, right? I just got gas at Sam's Club a couple days ago for $1.28. Other prices are starting to come down. Things are going to go on sale. And so we're going to start to see prices come down in the economy. But unfortunately, that also makes our output decrease. Okay, so coming back down here, what happened to our price level? We said it went down. Okay, let me do this in a different color so we can see the contrast. All right, so price level went down. GDP also went down, but remember, we're trying to figure out how price level influences unemployment. Okay, so bottom line is, what has happened in our economy? Demand has decreased. Okay, GDP goes down. What's happening to unemployment in our economy? It's gone way up, right? So unemployment goes way up because we're making fewer things. Okay, businesses are shutting down or scaling back what they're producing, all that kind of stuff. And so we need fewer, I'm sorry, messed that up, my bad. We need fewer workers. Okay, I was getting ahead of myself, fewer workers, and that's going to cause unemployment to go up. Okay, so again, I want you to pay close attention to what happened here. Demand decreased, it made price level go down, unemployment go up. So the first time, inflation went up and unemployment went down. This time, inflation goes down, unemployment goes up. So when demand shifts in the economy, either increase or decrease, what kind of relationship is there? inverse, okay? So in other words, typically, okay, in the economy, and let's come back to our graph here, we're trying to figure out how inflation and unemployment are related. Typically, there is a downward sloping, we call this a short-run Phillips curve, SRPC. There is a long-run Phillips curve, you guys don't need to know it, so be thankful. But short-run Phillips curve, which typically says if inflation is high, unemployment's going to be low. And then what happened in our second scenario, inflation went down. Okay, so inflation's coming down, but unemployment's going up. That's why it's a downward sloping curve. There's just one curve here. Again, there is a long run, but we're not going to worry about that. In the short run, there's just one curve. So let me show you, for example, let's say our first scenario, we're going to call this point A. Okay, remember our first scenario, demand increased. And what happened to prices? Prices went up, or inflation went up. What happened to unemployment? It went down. So in other words, from point A, we're going to move somewhere over here to what we'll call point B, showing that inflation is going up and unemployment is going down because there's an inverse relationship. In our second scenario, okay, where demand decreased, when demand decreased, inflation went down, unemployment went up, and that moved us to the right along the curve to say, we'll call it point B. Okay, from A to B shows that inflation goes down, unemployment goes up, and that's exactly what we showed back here. Inflation goes down, unemployment goes up. That's why it's a downward sloping curve, because it says that typically there's an inverse relationship between inflation and unemployment. All right, now, why is this important? Why are we talking about this? Because this is something the government needs to be aware of as they engage in fiscal policy actions or monetary policy actions. Okay, they need to know that if they're going to get unemployment to come down, that could cause inflation. Or if they're going to try to get inflation to come down, that could cause higher unemployment because of this seesaw, because of this inverse relationship. So, if we're experiencing a high rate of unemployment, most likely because we're in a recession, what's the government going to do? What are they doing right now? They're spending more, and or they're taxing less. That's what we learned last time with fiscal policy, right? In times of recession, you either spend, the government should spend more and or tax less. Now, here's the good news. As they spend more and tax less, what did we learn? That's going to increase aggregate demand in the economy, and that would move us this first way that I did toward point B. Here's the good news. Unemployment comes down as we move from A to B. What's the bad news? Inflation goes up. Remember, that's the trade-off. Okay, so the bad part about that is that we might see some higher prices. And again, maybe the economy is suffering to the point where it's a necessary evil, and we're willing to deal with higher prices to make sure that people are getting back to work and this and that. All right, let's look at the other scenario. Number 14, we have a high rate of inflation because of expansion and whatnot. And so remember what we learned last time when we're in expansion. I should erase my line there. When we're in expansion, particularly when inflation's a problem, what does the government do? In that case, the government does the opposite. They're either going to spend less and or tax more. That takes money out of people's pockets, out of the economy, and it decreases aggregate demand. Now, here's the good news. We start at point A, and the government decreases aggregate demand. That's going to move us to point B. The good news is, look what happened to inflation. Inflation came down. Great, right? What's the bad news? Look at what's going to happen to unemployment. It goes up. Okay, that's the trade-off. So unemployment increases, and again, that might be a necessary evil. If inflation is getting out of control, we might be willing to deal with a little bit of unemployment in the short run in order to get that inflation to come under control. Okay, so the big thing, the big summary that you need to know is that when demand shifts, there is an inverse relationship between inflation and unemployment. That's the most important thing. Now, let's look at what happens when supply shifts. It's a little bit of a different animal. Okay, so when supply shifts, let's just show this, and what was my first one? What happens if supply increased? Okay, the question is what happens to prices and unemployment. So let's show you an increase in supply. Remember ERDL? Increase right, decrease left. So here's our new supply. Compared to our original price level, what is true of our new price level? Okay, that it went down. That's good. So inflation comes down. Now, here's our original GDP. Here's our new GDP. So GDP goes up. And again, following the logic we said a moment ago, if GDP goes up, we need more workers because we're making more things. And that's going to make unemployment go down. So when supply increases, prices come down, and unemployment goes down. Wait a minute. You're saying, MERS, I thought we just learned that there's an inverse relationship between inflation and unemployment. One goes up, the other one goes down. Supply shifts do not fit the Phillips curve. They are the anomaly to the Phillips curve. Okay? Takes us off the Phillips curve. I'm going to show you that in just a second. Well, let me do that now since we're here. So let's say we start at point A, okay, like we've been starting at, right? So we're at point A. Now, from point A, with the scenario I just gave you, okay, just to remind you, what happened to prices or inflation? It went down. What happens to unemployment? It goes down. So if we start at point A and we make inflation go down and unemployment go down, notice we come way out here off the curve to what I call point B. Again, showing that supply shifts, supply shocks do not fit the Phillips curve. They take us off of the Phillips curve. It doesn't fit that model, okay? So it doesn't work. All right, so that's one scenario. Now the other scenario, number 17, what would happen if there was an increase, a decrease in supply? Okay, so let's see what happens there. So here's our original, and supply decreases, so it shifts left, Ertl. All right, now, compared to our original price level, what's true of our new price level? Went up, very good. Okay, compared to our original GDP, what's true of our new GDP? It has gone down. Now again, if GDP goes down, we're making fewer things, and that means that we're going to need fewer workers, so unemployment is going to go up. Again, notice, does not fit the Phillips curve. Both prices or inflation and unemployment increase at the same time. Again, put it this way, we start at point A, supply decreases in the economy. From point A, what happens? Inflation goes up, unemployment goes up, and we end up way out there off the curve, to the right this time. Okay, last time we kind of came inside, this time we move outward off the curve. Okay, it does not fit the Phillips curve. Now, so the question number 18, does the Phillips curve apply during a time when the economy experiences a supply shock? Shock is a fancy way of saying supply shifts. The answer, no, it does not. Okay, there is no relationship when supply shifts between inflation and unemployment. It does not go inverse. Now, there's a special term for what we just described. Okay, high inflation and high unemployment at the same time. That's kind of our worst case scenario for an economy. Think about that for a second. Not only do you lose your job, but you go to the store and prices are higher. You go to get gas, gas prices are higher. You go to buy a new home, home prices are higher, right? That really stinks. Okay, you just lost your job and prices are going up. That's kind of our worst case scenario as an economy. There's a very special term for that. That is called stagflation. Okay, make sure you know that term. It will show up on the test. Okay, stagflation means high unemployment and high inflation at the same time. Not a good situation to be in. Okay, the economy's not, things are not very fun with the economy when that's going on. So that's called stagflation. It's a very special term, and we do not like that. Okay, as always, if some part of that still didn't make sense, you need me to explain it, by all means, give me an email or a text. I'd be happy to kind of go over it again with you, or maybe explain it in a different way, but hopefully that makes sense to you. As always, miss you guys, and until next time.